And of course, you were in IIT Kharagpur. That's my state.
Yeah.
And I guess we are live. So, dear friends, a very, very good evening to all of you. Today, we have with us a very, very interesting author. Of course, very well known already in her own right, Saiswaroopa Iyer ji. She's
Thank
joining us
you.
from Bangalore today. And why I said interesting is because we read about so many characters in mythology and everything, but she has conjured up a list of characters who personally I'm extremely intrigued about, and it would be really interesting and very, very insightful to hear about all that. But before we start off about it, a little bit about her. I mean, she has been an investment professional. I don't know what is it with investment bankers and investment professionals writing books, but well, it seems to be a great way of getting into book writing, it seems. So she has been an investment professional before she turned her passion to storytelling. She also holds a certificate in the Puranas from the Oxford Center of Hindu Studies, University of Oxford, United Kingdom, and also she's a very accomplished Carnatic classical singer. So we have with us a very, very accomplished person. And without much ado, thank you, Sai ji, Swarupa ji, Sai Swarupa ji, for joining us. And I am really grateful to you for giving us this opportunity to not only discuss your new book, which is, of course, Rukmini, but also we would like to know about all your other books and this whole genre that you write about. So
Sure.
thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining.
Thanks a lot, Rishabh for that very warm welcome. It's always a pleasure to come back to the platform of Kalinga Literary Festival, Bhava Samvad. I enjoy a lot of conversations that happen on this platform. There is a unique edge to KLF. The conversations have a lot of content of value, and pleasure to be interacting with you as well. You have an impressive profile, so looking forward for this evening.
Thank you for your kind words, but this evening is not about my profile. It's all about you. And so, jumping right in, uh, Rukmani. I mean, she's a familiar name compared to the some of the other characters that you've written about. She's a familiar name, but normally it's like a footnote in the stories that we read
Mahabharata,
of
yes.
the Mahabharata, or even in the popular genre. Even when you talk about Lord Krishna, we normally talk about Radha ji, but Rukmini is there somewhere. I will not say she's totally unknown, but it's not. What made you write about Rukmini of all people?
So I hope I have the bandwidth for a detailed response,
Absolutely, we
Rishabh.
are all
So
intrigued and we would like to know.
yes.
Please.
So as you said, yes, when we take the name of Lord Krishna, it's Radha who is more popular, and because there is a whole sampradaya that became popular, pan India, who worships Radha along with Krishna, right? The Gaudiya Sampradaya, ISKCON, and and I am a big fan of ISKCON's Akshay Patra, who have been doing stellar service in these times. So, yes, Rukmini's significance, as you said, again, it became a kind of a footnote, but worship of Krishna, the traditional worship of Krishna, especially in the pre-Gaudiya era, you can see it relevant in the southern part of India. When there is a Krishna worship, he's always worshipped along with Rukmini and Satyabhama.
Mhm.
So when we chant Vishnu Sahasranama, right, the one of the shlokas that precede the Sahasranama says Rukmini Satyabhamabhyam Sahitam Krishna Mashraye. So that has been in the traditional worship of Krishna. It has always been Rukmini and Satyabhama, akin to Sri Devi and Bhudevi.
Mhm.
So basically, so of course, we are a civilization that follow a variety of sampradayas, and we don't have problem with each other. We celebrate each other, we respect each other. So which is why I love all the temples which have Krishna with Radha as well. That's a very beautiful relationship. But yes, Rukmini's significance comes in the when we read Mahabharata and allied texts like Harivamsham, Bhagavatam, and Vishnu Purana parallelly, there is a macro political development that happens in the Mahabharata, which prematurely ends because of Krishna's wedding with Rukmini. Of course, because the focus is right on the rivalry between the Pandavas and Kauravas, we miss out the larger political scenario which involves kingdoms like Magadha, Avanti, and the way the king of Magadha, that is Jarasandha, wants to dominate over the rest of Bharatvarsha, without, like, say, Yudhishthira wanted to, ethically dominate Bharatvarsha by becoming a Chakravarti Samrat, and he conducts a Rajasuya for that, and his brothers conduct a military campaign which is fair and square. Right, but Jarasandha's way of dominion is by playing politics with and playing marital politics.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have this Magadha is a powerful empire. It's a vast empire, basically pampered by the river Ganga. So it's a fertile land, and he's a great warrior, Jarasandha. And then there is Panchala, right on the other side of Ganga. There is Panchala, and then there are Kurus, right? And if one does not get more powerful than the other two, all is good. If two of them partner, they'll neutralize the third, and the domination starts. So that's exactly what we see in the Mahabharata. The alliance between Kurus and Panchalas is the prelude to dominating Magadha and other
Correct.
other kingdoms. But before that, Jarasandha, the way he dominates Bharatvarsha is like he senses that he's quite old compared to Pandavas and Kauravas. He's like
Yeah.
the grandfather, basically. He's like Bhishma. He's a but he wanted like he sensed that Pandu is a promising king, and he may come and defeat me. So he wanted a nemesis for Pandu, which is why he gave his daughters to Kamsa of all the people. Kamsa is a small Yadava lord compared to all these powerful kings of these vast kingdoms. He's a small lord of Mathura. Dwarka was not established then.
That time.
And then
Yeah.
yeah, so same way he one of his attempts was to make Vidarbha, that is the modern day Maharashtra, and Chedi, both the kingdoms subservient to him by this alliance between Shishupala, who is the prince of Chedi, and Rukmini, who is the princess of Vidarbha. And once the marriage is done, it's like these both kingdoms would be very loyal to Jarasandha, and that's what he has been doing all his life. Like for a whole generation, he did that. This is the second generation he started dominating over, and which is why Rukmini exactly rebelled uh, at that alliance, and she chose Krishna, who was a promising nemesis to Jarasandha. Krishna killed Kamsa, which stopped Jarasandha's dominion over the Kuru lands, basically. And which is why Jarasandha was very angry. He pursued Krishna with a vengeance. He pursued Krishna. He wanted to destroy Mathura. And finally, even the Yadavas had to leave, searching for safer shores. And they established Saurashtra, Dwaraka, basically, and the whole confederacy they developed there. So Rukmini's wedding to Krishna signifies that moment where it's the first rebellion to Jarasandha's movement. I mean, it's the first break to Jarasandha's dominion. Once Rukmini's wedding with Krishna happened, the rise of Pandavas started.
Mhm.
Then
Interesting.
there
So, yeah, I mean, a lot of this. So, I had the possibility in the last 1 week to read Rukmini, and I was amazed at the kind of detailing and the kind of socio political environment that you have created. See, being from the more of the northern part of the country, actually, I'm in Calcutta, so I'm from the eastern part of the country, and
Okay.
mostly fed by the images from the popular television series more than anything else. You know, you look at a very different, glossed out version of all these things. So when I was reading the book and the kind of socio-political issues that you bring up, and the layers of complexities, where you even talk about the kings looking at things like money, looking at trade and how they accumulate money, which is
Yes.
perhaps unknown in the parlance of the mythology that we have normally been reading. And if I'm wrong, please pardon my ignorance, but in popular mythology you never read about these uh, the actual nuts and bolts of governance, of
Yes.
alliance making. I mean, we read about alliance making much later in history in terms of the Mughals and what they were doing with the Rajputs and stuff like that. But we never hear that in terms of our mythological characters. So I think there are so many layers, which is fascinating, and I would like you to kind of stop here because you're giving away too much right now. And I would want everyone to be intrigued and actually pick up a copy, because we would be doing everyone a great disservice by saying all that you're saying. Honestly, it is so layered.
Thank you.
The whole writing and the whole text is so layered. Honestly, I do not know how much of it this is your imagination and how much of it is your study, but I can tell you the final conclusion is absolutely riveting. When you read about, it's almost as if somebody's watching history and writing it out. So that would
Thank
bring
you.
me to
Thank you so much.
so when you look at this book, Rukmani, how much of it is actual derivative information? Of course, as an author, I'm sure you've taken your creative liberties and your everything.
Yes.
But how much of this entire portrayal of those times, the various anecdotal things, how much of it is from various texts, and how much of it is somewhere you kind of brought it together?
So basically, this pertains to my style of expanding these events. So if you look at the macro events of the book, that is, the various attacks of Jarasandha on Krishna, then the wedding of Rukmini and whatever follows it, and the parallel story to Mahabharata, there is always a clue that Bhagwan Vedavyasa has left us, right?
Hmm.
And he's basically, it is his world that writers like me are riding upon. So
Correct.
there's nothing that I wouldn't want to claim, that I'm creating anything, because these are the characters that have existed like millennia ago and are still alive in our imagination and in our worship, in our religion. They are still alive. But my my liberty comes under, you say, visualization of each scene, basically at a dialogue and scene level. That is where I get my imagination alive, because we know for a fact that women used to participate in the Yadava Sabhas, the Sudharma
Yes,
Sabha of the Yadavas.
yes.
Women used to participate, that is for a fact. But how to show it, right? Because there is a difference between Indic storytelling and the popular storytelling, which most of the novels follow. Indic storytelling follows a lot of tell element, because there is a listener. There's a listener with an adhikara. Like Parikshit wants to listen to Bhagavata, not because he doesn't know the story. It's his his grandmother's brother. Krishna is his
Correct.
grandmother's brother, and he would obviously be knowing the story. But he wanted to know the depth, the knowledge in depth from from Bhagavatam, from the story of Krishna, from a person no less than Bhagavan Shuka Maharshi, because
Mhm.
who is the son of Vyasa himself. So he is ready for that knowledge and wisdom rather than the story. So along with the story, Shuka gives him a lot of knowledge which he is ready to receive. And same with Janamejaya, who is listening to the Mahabharata. He is interested in the nuggets of wisdom that Vaishampayana is transferring along with the story. So Indic storytelling has a lot of the sermonization basically, and there a lot of detail is passed. which conveniently gets filtered off in the popular adaptations because we are not used to here listening to a long dialogue between two characters
Conveniently
where
gets
nothing
filtered off in the
happens.
popular adaptations because we are not used.
Sorry, was there a echo?
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
something.
Okay, okay. Yes, so we are not used to that long dialogue level adaptation in our visual, popular visualization, which is why a lot of this knowledge gets glossed over. And I thought one way to bring back that knowledge is by getting intrigue into the scene. Like, say there is a discussion happening in the Yadava Sabha and Rukmini wants to put forth something, and again, Yadavas are not a monarchy, they are a republican system. So we have to have representations from various households, various powerful households, and maybe Krishna and Rukmini want to put forth an idea or a proposal, and there are some people who are opposing it, and various discussions happen in a whatever a pro cons are weighed against each other and seen. So those are the parts that I find very exciting because it requires me to think from both sides and study the whole political scenario, macro political scenario in depth.
No, but it's actually very fascinating, and you yourself mentioned, which was another aspect of which has not normally come out in the popular parlance, is how empowered the women were at that point of time.
Yes.
When I read the book, and where Rukmini is actually part of the royal discussions, where they are discussing various things, and even Lord Krishna relies on Rukmini quite a lot to manage
Yes.
certain events. So that's a very interesting portrayal. But tell me something. So apart from the Mahabharata, are there other texts which you relied on for information, or in terms of, is there a literature we are missing, which has a lot of depth about these characters?
So
Which
the root scriptural texts are the Mahabharata, the Bhagavat, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Vishnu Purana, as well as Harivamsham, which is a appendix to the Mahabharata.
okay,
So Harivamsham deals with Krishna's story in detail, because in the main Mahabharata we don't get Krishna just appears during Draupadi Swayamvara, and the story
correct.
carries on from there.
Yes,
But Krishna's past and weddings are detailed out in the Harivamsham.
I see.
That's one thing. Then there are these scholarly works which deal with the personality of Krishna, which have studied the avatara of Krishna, with these scholars who have applied their knowledge. So some of them are, there is one study by Altekar, R.S. Altekar, who basically detailed about this women's participation in Sudharma Sabha.
I see.
Yes. So also then there are these whole scholarly works on Krishna's avatarahood. There is a book by Bhagavan Das. It's published by Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, which is Krishna, a study in the theory of avatars.
I see.
Where so basically
What I
the
meant was,
gist.
are there any of our old texts, like we have the Bhagavad Gita, or I mean, there are other texts. Are there any other texts which have got lost in this popular parlance as far as people are concerned?
I don't think the texts are lost, but because they are vast, very vast, we don't get to read the unabridged versions of those texts, like the Mahabharata, the English translation of the Mahabharata by Dr. Debroy. It's a 10-volume book from 5,000 to 6,000 pages.
Yes,
So by the time a reader actually finishes one round of Mahabharata, it would have taken him years. And as a honest confession, I am just doing my fourth reading of the same Mahabharata, and I keep wondering why, this part I missed in my earlier readings, and so there are a lot of parts that we miss out in each of our reading, because Mahabharata is, of course, this is a believer saying it. Mahabharata is not just one text. Our life experience, it influences the way we read Mahabharata. In turn, Mahabharata influences the way we look at our own life, and
Absolutely.
So every second time we come back, it's a new Mahabharata that we are reading.
Absolutely. I think that's it's also about unfolding of our own understanding, our own vision, our own
Yes,
maturity. So every time we read
exactly.
something, it brings in a new element.
New element.
I don't think the text changes. It is we who are changing and changing our perception of the text.
Exactly. So we choose to dwell upon certain aspects and gloss over the others. And the
Absolutely.
next time we read, it would be the focus would be different.
So we are all grateful to people like you who have brought these various aspects. As I admitted myself, that perhaps
Thank
for
you.
someone like me, Rukmini was just a footnote, just another character. I mean, even when you look at the Mahabharat per se, even if you look at the five Pandavas, apart from the three brothers, the other two brothers are just like, an appendage. And all the others are what you can call in a story character artists who may come, may not come. If I was a casting director, I would say, okay, let me get my Arjun first, let me get my Krishna first, and okay, so we can put someone there. But
Yes.
shifting gears, I was reading about. Unfortunately, I've not been able to read all the other books that you've written, but you have some very interesting titles and all extremely strong female characters. And of course, your last book before this was Draupadi, who, of course, is a very popular name in her own right. And
Yes.
a lot of books have also been written by other authors about Draupadi
Yes.
and,
Yes.
and, and Draupadi's version of the whole what was going on from the eyes of Draupadi. That has happened.
True.
But your first book was Abhaya, which I believe is based on Satyabhama, and then Avishi, which is the legend of Vishwapala,
Yes,
and
that's
then,
one departure from the Mahabharata
yes.
universe and to back to Rigvedic
So,
period.
let's start with Abhaya. Why Satyabhama? I mean, you are a new author. You are writing your first book. I will come back to how you wrote that book, because that there is a story to that also, which we will come back to you
Yes.
for. But
So
I mean, why would you pick up Satyabhama of all the characters and say, this is the person about whom I'm going to write a book?
sure. So one clarification I have to make there is that Abhaya is not Satyabhama.
Okay, my bad. I mean,
There is sorry, no, there are
wait,
many
wait,
who
wait,
interpret the culprit is me because I have basically hijacked Satyabhama's story to fit in heroine that I have created. I have admitted. Actually, when I was writing Abhaya, I'll tell you the inspiration for that. But as I was writing Abhaya, I have faced a lot of roadblocks and. One of those times I felt that maybe Satyabhama is angry with me, which is why I promised her a poem, at the beginning of the book, saying this, this is like my passion, so please allow me to complete it, and I'm going to dedicate this book to you. So that was my prayer, and after that. Once the book was completed, I wrote a poem for Satyabhama in Telugu. The root inspiration for Abhaya was one conversation which I had with my Muslim friend. Casual conversation. That's the real India. It's not that polarized conversations that we have on social media. So she asked me. Why do you like Krishna though he has so many wives? And then that was the time I narrated the story of Narakasura Vadha,
yes.
where Krishna actually rescued so many women, and by the time he rescued them, they had gone away from the mainstream life, and they were not sure to find their way back again. And he marries them so that they can have a respectful social life, right? And that was the reason. That in if anything, we should be having more respect for Krishna, even if we don't, if you don't believe him to be a god or something, you should be having more respect for Krishna for that one major step he took. Then she was actually impressed, and she said, we never get to know about these stories, and all that we told are those we get told are those the childhood pastimes of Krishna, where he played with the gopikas, he was mischievous and all that, and that doesn't. She said that doesn't evoke the same feeling that you just evoked in me by the story of Narakasura, and that was the time I was 17. We were 17, just entering college at that time, and that was my root inspiration. I just wanted to narrate stories which were not popular. So basically, Krishna's childhood became popular because of certain sampradayas, where which thought they'll propagate joy and bliss by making Krishna one among us. Like kids are mischievous, and Krishna is like one amongst us, kind of a philosophy. So there is a ananda element in that, and there is a spiritual element in that. Bhagavata itself has that, but we miss out a lot of other stories which are again either narrated as as an appendix, like Harivamsha. The whole of Harivamsha is an appendix to the Mahabharata, right? And Narakasura Vadha is one chapter in that appendix, so nobody exactly talks about it in detail. And I wanted to write a story. I didn't even know that I want to write a story, but I started imagining everything from the perspective of one of those rescued girls, those 16,000 girls rescued by Krishna. I started reimagining the whole, Mahabharata, the way things unfold from one of the perspective of one of those girls. Would she, how would she feel? Would she have, she would feel grateful or happy or resentful, or why did she end up there in the first place? And what was her past? And this whole imagination put this story together. And as you said, yes, I had a career, I had a the whole education, academic trajectory and a career trajectory. I didn't never got to pursue that, but somehow it stayed very strong within me. And at the next opportunity, I thought I'll actually write down the story and narrate it. So that's how Abhaya came to be. So she happens to be one of the minor princesses whose very small kingdom is located in the borders of Dwaraka, the Saurashtra and Avanti. And the way this very small kingdom is affected because of the greater politics, and the way she finds her way to Narakasura's captivity, and what follows that is Abhaya.
Fascinating. And then you have a sequel to it, which is Maori,
Maori. Yes.
which is love story between Khatochkach and Maori. I do not know how many people who are watching this are even aware of this. At least I was not till I started reading up for this session. Uh, how did you come across this? I mean, this is a trajectory nobody even thinks about.
I know, because again, the story of Narakasura itself has very interesting elements to it. He's the king of Pragjyotisha or Kamrup, where we have this Shakti Pita called Kamakhya. It's a tantric high seat of tantric Shaktism. So they follow a specific order of Shaktism called Vamachara.
Okay.
Where there are rituals which the so-called traditional orthodox side of Hinduism would not openly encourage, but then we coexist, right? So Narakasura was a Shakta in a way. It's he was a Shakti worshipper gone the wrong side, basically. But and then there are this Shakta texts like Kalika Purana and Yogini Tantra, where Narakasura is shown as being killed by Devi.
Okay.
And Bhagavatam claims that Krishna killed him. The Shakta texts claim that the Devi killed him, and South Indians believe that Satyabhama killed him.
Okay.
So there was an interesting exercise reconciling all these various narratives. And there is another story of the daughter Mura happens to be the commander of Narakasura, and the detailing of Mura's battle with Krishna has been given more focus than actual battle of Narakasura with Krishna.
I see. Okay.
So Maori is Mura's daughter.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Interesting.
So
So
she,
how these things kind of tie up. And in between this one trajectory or this one episode that you have been pursuing, I don't know, from Abhaya to Maori, and then of course you came up to Draupadi. Where did suddenly Vishapala come in? Avishi is about.
yes, yes.
So I mean,
So
how did you just you got bored of this, or
not exactly. Avishi was my second book,
yeah?
actually. So, to be frank, Mahabharata is my home turf, and I keep, going. One book I keep making this one book trips outside the comfort zone just for, expansion of my own knowledge and things. So, Vishpala has a compelling story. What happened is that I was working on Abhaya, and there was a particular scene where Abhaya's father is narrating a story to her, a very young Abhaya, a very young Abhaya. So when we narrate stories to children, we narrate to them inspiring stories from the past, be it Ramayana, Mahabharata, Maharana Pratap, Shivaji, Vivekananda, Shankaracharya, right? So a father set in the a father in the Mahabharata era would want some inspiring tales from his past. So I wanted a warrior, woman warrior who existed in the pre Mahabharata era, and that's how I stumbled upon this very compelling character called Vishpala, who is mentioned only in the Rig Veda.
I see.
And irony of it is that I got to know about her in one of medical journals from an Israeli university.
I
They
see.
mentioned, yeah. So they
Wow.
mentioned Vishpala as the world's first reference to prosthesis. So
Okay.
Rigveda, yeah, Rigveda, the hymns dedicated to Ashwini Kumaras tell about the story of this Vishpala. Vishpala herself means queen, head of a settlement. It means head of a settlement. So Vishpala is probably what they call as Maharani in the older Sanskrit era, which is why I had to take a different name for her, Avishi.
Mhm.
So Vishpala loses her leg in a battle. It's called Kaila's battle. And Ashwini Kumaras give her a metal leg.
I
So this
see.
is an interesting element. That metal, what is that metal? Whether it's iron, bronze, copper, historians keep debating. But I'm a storyteller, so I'll stick to metal.
No, and it's
So
smart
yes,
to
we
do
have
that.
this, yeah, Bronze Age, Iron Age, and all that, debate. It's exciting debate when somebody is interested in history. But point remains that any Puranic episode which is dedicated to gods, right? It has miracles are very common. If it was purely miraculous, why didn't they just make her whole magically? Give her back her leg. Instead, they gave her a metal leg, which means that the idea of prosthesis existed in the times of Rig Veda. So Rig
Absolutely.
Veda, there was this visualization that person who has lost his limb can survive on an artificial limb.
Mhm. Interesting.
Yes, and there were not much of talk about Vishpala in any of our Indian texts. I mean, Rigveda and the commentary aside, I just felt that we don't talk about her as much as we should be talking, and instead she's finding references in an Israeli journal, in a American conference brochure, and whatever. This thing. So I wanted to bring that story out, and then the cover design that we made for Vishpala, the artist was Anirudh Sainath. I mean, he's not among us anymore. But once he drew that picture and the book came out, I think the cover picture is circulated amongst all these Hindu WhatsApp forwards saying, "Oh, we were so advanced at that age," and all that.
No, well, everybody wants to color it in their thing, but I mean, even if we remove that aspect, the whole visualization or the whole
Yes,
concept
yes.
itself is fantastic. And I also read that it is slated to become either a major production house has signed up on creating the Indian Wonder Woman out of Vishpala. So
Yeah,
Congratulations.
that was the thanks a lot. And yes, the production house and the people were really excited, and I we're working with them, and the pandemic kind of put a temporary break to it, but yes, we should be announcing something soon about
And there is no super suit. It's the normal clothes that she's going to be
yes,
wearing. That's
yes, she's a
fantastic.
real Wonder Woman.
Absolutely. So it's really interesting, and we're all waiting to see these characters come around live on the big screen with a different dimension, a different interpretation, and you've done phenomenal work in fleshing these out, as I have mentioned earlier, as people who were perhaps footnotes, or who got lost in this whole clamor of popular culture, which got picked up with various people and various authors and various times. With due respect to everyone, I mean, there's not one against the other, but some things got picked up and something perhaps more deserving got lost out in our traditions. So, and then after that, you came to Draupadi, which is fairly mainstream for you, considering your first three books had absolutely,
Prepared me with the research needed for
so you
Draupadi.
said, "Oh,
Yes.
this is low hanging fruit. Let me just finish it." Is it?
Not exactly low hanging. I mean, low hanging fruit in terms of the comfort zone, because Mahabharata is my, whether I write stories or not, Mahabharata is a world that I always live in. A part of me always lives in. So that was a delightful. So the research was really delightful. Whenever, whatever, I enjoy that path. So again, Draupadi, I had to write about her because again she is one of the most misunderstood character. Now we have a problem. We have characters who are neglected, and we have characters who are oversung to a level that they are completely removed from the actual form that they existed
Right.
in.
We also have a
So
tendency to gloss over things. You make someone larger than life,
yes,
or you put them in one mold and you just stick to that because
stick
that
to
is your
that.
comfort that you have in terms of placing someone. So,
Exactly, exactly. And Draupadi in the Mahabharata, she comes out as a very intellectual woman. A side of her that we lost in depicting her as some vengeful, angry woman.
absolutely, that's the popular
Right? And
narrative which comes
yes,
out
yes.
to the time that the whole war was caused by one woman, for one woman, by one woman, kind of stories.
Yeah, because a scale of that level cannot be caused by one person, whether be it a woman or man. One man or woman cannot be responsible for 18 Akshauhinis. Those are 4 million uh,
People die.
soldiers coming in together, so full soldiers, excluding the charioteers, and, even they were killed,
Mm.
right? Charioteers, mahouts, and so just sheer scale of Mahabharata war is something else. So not one person could have caused it. But yes, everybody had some or the other role, and probably it was waiting to happen. So Yudhishthira tried his best. Yudhishthira tried his best to put it off, put it off, put it off. Okay, I'll compromise here. So yeah, here, okay, even his playing the dice game was a kind of a compromise, so that a war can be averted.
Correct.
Finally it could not be averted, and which is why we see Yudhishthira in the Mahabharata war not wavering like Arjuna. Once the war starts, his heart was in the war, not
Correct.
not otherwise, because he has done his best to stop it. He has gone to extreme levels to stop it, and taken extreme ordeals upon himself, his family, and also his conscience is totally clear about the war. So coming to Draupadi, right? There are things that we miss out from the Mahabharata, because even the visual representations of Draupadi is mostly the Vastraharana episode, and
Yes.
probably one or two episodes with her worshipping Krishna or something like that, right? So, what happens in the as per the critical edition of Mahabharata is that this miraculous incident where she's dragged into the sabha, and then the Dushasana tries to disrobe her, and there's another garment covering her as soon as he pulls out one garment, and it happens very fast. And there is a couple of chapters that focus on Draupadi's conversation with the Sabha. And that gets glossed over by the popular narratives. So we only have an angry woman, but actually the way Draupadi handles, and I'm quoting Mahabharata, not my book, is once everything is done, then the way Draupadi says is that, see, I am the daughter of Drupada, and I am the wife of the Pandavas. I'm a daughter-in-law of Pandu. I have certain codes and protocols that I follow. And the way I was dragged into this sabha didn't allow me to follow any of those protocols. So I don't enter a sabha without saluting an elder. So whoever is there, elders, first namaste to all of them. Look at the whole style of, there is irony, there is protocol, and there is, a whole epitome of strength. So she is not forgetting her,
Decorum.
yes, decorum in that moment. And when this whole and she's contesting that she's not a slave. Yudhishthira does not have the right to wager me because he has lost himself. He stopped being my lord, so he does not have the right to wager me. If you thought that once a man is lost, all his family is also your slaves or something, you wouldn't have asked him to wager me. That's so the fact that you asked him to wager me proves that you don't consider me a natural slave. And the fact that he is not a free man proves that he doesn't have the right to wager me. It's a totally legal point for which nobody has an answer.
I guess that is why these chapters got left out, because in a predominantly patriarchal interpretation of our texts, if there is a character which is asking difficult or uncomfortable questions, it is much easier to relegate them to some side role or a unidimensional personality, giving them some highlights of some aspects of their personality, and
And
gloss
also
over.
this wisdom which gets missed out, Rishabh ji, because there Vidura makes a great point saying when a heinous act is committed in a sabha, Dushasana gets only 25% of that sin, that pap. 50% of the pap is accrued to the king who let it happen. So Dhritarashtra, you are the most of the biggest of the sinners amongst us. Dushasana gets 25%, and rest of us who did not do anything, we get the rest 25%. So that is what actually forces Dhritarashtra to annul the game. Then he asks Draupadi ki, a lot of wrong has been done, so tell me, how can I compensate, ask for boons. And the first thing Draupadi asks is the freedom of Yudhishthira. And the next thing she asks is freedom of Yudhishthira's 4 brothers along with their weapons. So that is her subtle reminder to her husbands ki now I have freed you from being slaves to Kauravas, and your weapons are back. So now is your time to reclaim them. And Dhritarashtra understands it, which is why he returns the kingdom also. And then there is a second game of dice, which is played. So in a way, Draupadi is the heroine of that episode, not a victim. So she is brought in as a, she's brought in as a slave in a very helpless situation, but she returns victorious.
Fantastic. I think it's fascinating, and I think as soon as we finish this, I guess Draupadi would be the next book that we need to pick up.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for bringing these stories to us, but I'm very intrigued. So we've done these relatively minor characters. We've got Draupadi, now Rukmini. So what next? Who is your next heroine? Do we have a breaking news somewhere? This is what you're going to be doing next.
The next should be, I am focusing on near history. I always maintain that Mahabharata as well is our history as well, but I'm looking at history which is nearer to us, especially around the Vijayanagara period, and in the backdrop of Vijayanagara, there are these very awesome kings and queens, smaller kings and queens who we should be honoring with stories due to them. And one
So
of the
this is
topics.
so you had two back-to-back Mahabharat books. So this is your back to challenge yourself
Departure, yes.
departure book. Interesting, very interesting indeed. I'm getting messages about coming to the chat and asking questions. But before I finish that off, one question. You've written only about strong women characters. And Mahabharat, you said, is your home game.
Yes, yes,
Suppose you had to write a book on a male character from that entire text or that ecosystem.
yes.
And don't tell me Krishna, please. But
No, it's not
who
Krishna.
would be the character you would like to write about? Who intrigues you? Who excites you the way these people have?
Yes, so the first character, the male character I would choose is Satyaki. His
Okay.
name is Yuyudhana Satyaki. His real name is Yuyudhana, but is popularly known as Satyaki. Again, a very unfortunate footnote in our in our popular adaptations, and he plays a huge role in the war. So my other creative challenges, or the sense of incompletion, is that I never got to cover the war. And Satyaki is one warrior who fought on the side of Pandavas with no marital obligation. Like, say, Drupada, Panchalas fought on the side of
Family.
Pandavas because Beti Diya and all that.
Hmm.
And there are other, most of the Pandava allies are maritally obliged to them, or they are thankful to the Pandavas because the Pandavas have done something good.
Alliance. It's an alliance. I mean, for various.
Yes, and
Yes.
Satyaki is one warrior, who is not exactly allied to the Pandavas, but he's grateful to the Pandavas because Arjuna taught him archery,
Okay.
advanced archery. So he's a disciple of Arjuna, and he's so passionately dedicated to the cause of Pandavas that there are times where you feel he's a greater supporter of Pandavas than Krishna himself was.
Wow.
There are those passionate moments where he defends them. Krishna manages some strategic silence at times, but Satyaki is always vocal in support of Pandava. So I think his tale of loyalty, right, it's kind of eclipsed by the whole oversung narrative of Karna, because the word loyalty gets only Karna to many people. So
Yes.
Satyaki is one, say, the counter image to Karna on the Pandava side. And then he's a Yadava, he's one of the Yadava lords.
So will you give? I mean, I will not say give up your loyalty towards the female characters. And do we see a Satyaki coming out anytime soon? Sometime?
Not yet, but as you said, if I were to write on a male character, I think I would begin with Satyaki. So I don't know when the time would come.
Interestingly,
So,
there is a question in our chat box by Deepak Rauji. I did not aware he
oh,
is
it's the
asking
same question.
He's asking the same question. So, Deepak Rauji, I hope you got your answer, and let us all look forward to hearing about, reading about, and perhaps in later watching about Satyaki as and when that happens. Let me also go to the chat box and see. We have a lot of comments, a lot of people saying great book, and there seems to be a lot of your fans who've joined in and talking about it. And there is a request by Navjyoti Reji, who's asking
About
if we can explain
Gandhari.
a bit about Gandhari.
So again, thanks for the idea, because I also think to explore each of these stories, those characters also need to bless me as their storyteller. But if someone is very interested to read the story of Gandhari, there's a beautiful book called The Curse of Gandhari, written by Aditi Banerjee. So please
Yeah.
give it a look, and she has explored Gandhari wonderfully. So the day I feel I could add something different from what Aditi mentioned, maybe I'll explore Gandhari.
There is a question by Debashish Ramantre ji which says, what is the micro difference between Radha and Rukmini? If you
So
would like.
Radha again is I would say a subtle heroine. So she doesn't get a mention in Bhagavata or a Mahabharata. So she's a part of the first we see her is in Brahma Vaivarta Purana and in Devi Bhagavatam, where Radha and Krishna have their own Goloka at par with Vaikuntha, or even there Krishna is equal to Shakti in Devi Bhagavatam,
I
whereas
see.
Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara are still I don't like the word lower, but they are created and they are subservient to Devi. But Krishna is seen as one independent Deva who is equal to Devi. He is yes. Basically, the Maya that Devi can weave, he is independent of that.
Interesting.
Yes,
So,
and Radha is his consort there. So here, when we try to reconcile the Vaishnava texts with Vaishnava texts in the sense the Bhagavatam and Harivamsham, Vishnu Purana, and so on with this, I think even the traditional scholars have given us this commentary, so it's not me making it up. As Radha is a Gupta Naika, they call it as a secret, not a secret, but a subtle heroine. She's not present in her gross form. So, and they say Radha is Krishna's Hladini Shakti. Basically, whatever is Krishna's potence or like she is a part of Krishna. So when we see Krishna in action, we are seeing Radha.
of course, mythology, I mean, over a period of time, what actually may have happened, and then there was a version of Saiswaroopa ji in that generation who created some stories out of. I think, a lot of these stories, more than the historical accuracy of it, they have a huge, huge learning and inspiration for all of us. I think the essence is what is really important. It doesn't matter whether
True.
18 million soldiers die or some research says it was not 18 million, it was 16 million. It doesn't matter.
That
Or even
doesn't matter.
8
I know.
million. But the story, it's the idea of the scale, the what it teaches us, what it inspires us. I think our mythologies, our stories have that very important aspect of learning.
Yes,
Is
yes.
very important. A question by Abhinav Agarwal ji on the chat says, were there any episodes in Rukmani's life that you had to leave out?
Oh, yes. I had to leave out a couple of major episodes, to stick to my focus. And, there are some readers who don't like it as well, who did not like it as well. It's basically her rivalry with Satyabhama, which finds a lot of adaptation in our performance arts.
Mhm.
Right there, so there is a whole episode of Parijata Paharana, that is the Tulabhara episode. So there, Satyabhama is shown as a very dominant and pampered wife of Krishna, and she thinks of performing this Punyaka Vratam, where she has to give Krishna in dana to a rishi. Yes, and and other wives are angry, saying, "Who gave you the right?" And just as most of us would feel angry with Yudhishthira for wagering Draupadi, right? We see parallel of that image of that where Satyabhama thinks that she can give Krishna in dana. She gives it to Narada, but to reclaim him back, she has to give equivalent gold, which is equivalent of Krishna's weight.
I see.
So she says because Satyabhama has a Samantakamani which gives her so much gold every day, Satyabhama is very confident that she can weigh Krishna, give that gold to Narada, as if Narada wants gold. And she can win Krishna back, and she gets the punya of that vrata, and Krishna would be just her husband after that. She did not want competition. So that's when Krishna plays himself, and all the gold and all the wealth she has cannot equal his weight. And finally she has to ask for Rukmini's help, and in contrast to Satyabhama's wealth, Rukmini places only one tulasi dala.
I see.
on that scale. And that Tulasi Dala, it has the weight of her bhakti and her faith, which is why it overweighs Krishna. It overscales Krishna
Fantastic.
in that. So this is basically it's a what do you say expansion of one beautiful shloka in the Gita called Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam,
Hmm.
where the Lord says, you can offer me a leaf or a fruit or water, whatever you offer, but with bhakti, I will become yours. That's the promise of Krishna, which is expanded here. But again, my premise of Rukmini was not exactly as a. Again, this story belongs to Satyabhama, not to Rukmini. There is the arc of character is Satyabhama's, not Rukmini's. So again, it would not be right for me to get that. And also, look, given the macro element of Mahabharata, I could not exactly visualize Krishna, Rukmini, and Satyabhama fighting with each other over, whatever, over sharing husband or something. I
I'm
always saw them as a united force, and which is
I'm
why
sure
I
they're
had
not.
to.
I mean, I think a lot of things that we interpret today is from today's sensibilities, where you would expect that two women would always be fighting over a man, or would not be happy with each other about, or would not be happy about sharing the attention of the man between them. But again, those are today's sensibilities. I don't think we have too much of time, but one interesting question, and I don't know, is that suppose, I mean, you've been working on the ecosystem of the Mahabharata. Suppose you were to write a book based on the Ramayana. This is Vaishali Shekhar Ramaji's question. Which character would that be if it was about Ramayana, from Ramayana?
Ramayana. Tricky. So again, Ramayana has very beautiful characters, which who again get glossed over because the main narrative follows a certain path. And again, I have to begin studying Ramayana with that with the same devotion and passion to be able to write about it. But the one person who I find very, very compelling in the Ramayana is Lord Hanuman. And
Interesting.
especially, yes, because again, his devotion, the bhakti of Hanuman gets a lot of platform, but not his jnana. And Hanuman himself is a scholar of, par excellence. There are few scholars who can debate with Hanuman and win. Logically, he is that kind of jnani. So
Well,
probably.
yeah, please, sorry, please
Yeah.
finish.
So probably it would be Hanuman who I'd want to explore, and probably Tara. So the Vanara civilization has some very interesting stories. So
Well, I think given the scale of and the sheer number of characters that the Mahabharata has, I do not know when you will get the opportunity to move out of that universe to come to Ramayana. But I was just reading a interesting comment by there is of course a lot of your fans. One Krishna Kumarji was talking about wanting to meet you very eagerly. But my question comes from a comment which somebody has again Krishna Kumarji has somebody's made, which is that you have. This is Rajesh Govindarajuru ji, who's talking about the fact that you're more than an author. You have helped a large number of Indic authors yourself, and I also read I think on Wikipedia or somewhere that you actually run a mentorship program for aspiring novelists. So I think you're not just a huge prolific scholar who's just doing things on your own, but you're helping others, which is fantastic. So what is this mentorship program that you're doing, and if you can share some light on that?
So yes, the first, I wouldn't want to call it a batch because it's not very formal as such. So various authors have face various roadblocks in their writing. Somebody gets stuck at the idea. Somebody starts the story, reaches the 10,000, 20,000 word limit, and then loses momentum. And then somebody almost has finished their manuscript and doesn't know what to do. And somebody has just published it or self-published it and they want to market or things like that. So I take people based on their customized requirement mostly. So
Fantastic. I
that's
think it takes a very large heart to be able to not only do what you want to do, but also help others achieve similar goals. And I think, and when you spoke about self-publishing, there was your first three books were actually not your regular publications. So if you could
yes,
just,
yes.
we already crossed our time limit, by the way. So if you
Oh,
could just
oh wow.
mention that, because that would be a huge inspiration, and for our audience, there are, I'm sure, a lot of people, aspiring authors, who would like to do things like that.
Yes.
So how did you go about it?
So self-publishing, I self-published on this platform called Kindle Direct Publishing, which is Amazon's self-publishing platform. It has exposure to the biggest audience globally. So India, yes, it's the dominant platform in India. Of course, there are audience from US, UK, and mostly the Anglosphere, where Indian population is also reckoning force. Right, so that way Amazon becomes the most favored platform for an Indian author wanting to self-publish, because that's the first site that anybody goes if they want to buy books.
A disclaimer:
That's one thing.
we've not received anything from Amazon for that endorsement.
No, I
Just
mean, it's a visit. Author has to think like an entrepreneur as well, and that way we have to choose whatever is the best platform for us. I would love to see an Indian, the Atmanirbhar kind of Indian soil-grown platform, but we have time before such a platform gains the same same mileage and audience. But
you
then there are self-publishing as is gives that end-to-end understanding to an author. You have a dashboard, and as a sale happens, you get it gets reflected in the dashboard, and whatever you are doing for marketing, whether it's working for you or it's not working for you. And so that way there is a lot of learning that happens in this whole self-publishing thing. Also, uh, to all the aspiring authors out there, I would say don't stop with one book. Keep writing. There are beautiful stories wanting to be told, I'm sure. So do please keep writing and keep publishing. Even the traditional book world has changed a lot from, compared to the time I published Abhaya, the 5.5 years. The traditional published world has changed a lot, and the industry is much more open-minded than it used to be. So yes, all the three self-published books are going to be taken up by a traditional publisher also, Rishabhji. The announcement would come at the right time, once.
Correct. In fact, it's important because, when you mentioned Kindle, I was today afternoon I was talking to someone about today's conversation. They said, what has she written? And I was telling them about it. And they said, and I said, this book and Satyabhama and all that stuff. And they said, but Kindle, I like to read a book on paper.
Yes.
I feel I don't get the same feel when I read a book online, or on a Kindle app, or on a tab and things like that. So it's wonderful news that those books are also going to come out in the regular publishing cycle. And for all
Yes.
the aspiring authors, once your book is written, one of the best platforms to showcase the book is the Kalinga Lit Fest. The Kalinga Lit Fest, the conversations are fascinating, the audience is fascinating, and they bring across the best of what is there out there in the Indian literary world.
And
So
if I may add to it, Rishabhji, Rashmiji and Sitanshuji, Ashutosh, they have been such, the most proactive Litfest team that I have ever seen.
Absolutely.
And they reach out to me saying that, okay, you were in conversation with this particular author and she seems new on the blog, so can we give them a platform? And this kind of proactive, this one was totally non-existent a couple of years back.
And the
If
passion to
so,
bring to showcase, the passion to, and it happens at a frequency which is very difficult to match. You go to
yes,
their
yes,
social media page timelines, the frequency that they are
yes,
able to
yes.
bring in, and the kind of passion that they bring in to bring in various stories, various authors, various platforms, various genres. Hats off to them, and of course, you stole my credit words for them, but nothing take
Oh,
is that doesn't take anything away. I think we've already crossed the timeline by a large margin. It was
yeah.
fantastic to chat with you. I hope we get very many more such opportunities, very many more such characters to read about. And thank you very much for this exciting, interesting, intriguing experience of these characters. Each of
Thank you.
them
Thanks a lot.
are something we would all want to read about. And thank you for bringing them to us. So,
Thank you.
friends,
Thanks a lot, Rishabh ji. It was a pleasure, and also a conversation depends a lot on the questions that the host asks. And I'm really grateful for the kind of questions you have asked me.
well, thank you. It was honestly a pleasure. I mean, asking a question is the easiest part. It's the profundity of the answers which are important. And I generally, I was talking to Ranjan even before this, that when he asked me to do this conversation, and I said, which book is this? And I started reading about it. I was fascinated, at to pick up a minor, what I would consider a minor character, and flesh it out totally, and bring it is really commendable. So thank you very, very much for
So,
bringing our history, our tradition alive, so in such real terms to all of us. So thank
thank
you,
you.
and
Thanks a
thank
lot.
you audience for joining us, and
Namaste.
have a great weekend, or whatever is left of it. Of course, large parts of India is under lockdown, so I guess it's a very long, prolonged weekend for a lot of us, including for us in Calcutta, where we've got a lockdown announced just from this morning. And whether lockdown or not, I think the only way we can overcome this very challenging situation is by being cautious. So please do not step out unless really, really necessary. There are very interesting conversations happening on Kalinga Lit Fest at very regular intervals. Go to the social media and follow it. And in case you've missed out on any of these, recordings are available on their social media handles, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. So a lot of things to do sitting at home, a lot of learnings, and also don't forget to order Saiswaroopa ji's two printed books online, and also the three books on Kindle which are available. So thank you very much. Looking forward to many such more conversations. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Namaste.